I was at Roldorf Co earlier this week for their shock absorption and anti-magnetism educational hangout. And there I had the chance to interact with some of the coolest micro brand watches that I could ever get my hands on. I also found in the pre-owned consignment section of the store a Rolex Submariner Date 16610 with the aluminum bezel and tritium dial. And while this watch looked great at first glance, the Submariner actually had a very interesting story that the shop owner filled me in on. Welcome back to the Odd Pal YouTube channel. I just visited Roldorf Co a couple days ago for the anti-magnetism and shock absorption workshop, and here I saw a Rolex Submariner Date sitting in the cabinet, which I was super confused about because all the watches in the store were from the range of $1,000 to $4,000, a lot of micro brands. There were of course like Bremonts present, but come on, it's a Bremont. So my attention was immediately gravitated towards this Rolex Submariner Date, and I asked the shop owner, Mary, whether I could try it on my wrist, take it out, look at it, stuff like that. And she's like, yeah, no problem. So she took it out of the cabinet, and right away, I noticed a few things were off. By no means an expert when it comes to submariners, pre-ceramic subs. Like I don't really know too much in the Rolex territory when it comes to reference numbers, dates, what parts they're supposed to have. And I didn't know that this was a 16610. That's very interesting. Do you know the reference number on this?
This is a 16610.
16610.
Yeah. And it is, we believe it's from early 90s, maybe very late 80s.
Nice. Which is pretty recent. And it is the last reference number of pre-ceramic submariners that Rolex had made. But looking at this watch, the first thing I noticed was that the lume dots, the lume indices, had this creamy patina on it, which I found was pretty bizarre. And it kind of looked like it's been relumed before because the surfaces weren't very even. I turned the watch around, I saw the case flank, the side of the case, and I saw some uneven polishing lines, which was a major red flag for me. And then I tried turning the bezel, which is not even a red flag, it's just the alarms were going off. Like it was a frictional bezel instead of 120 click unidirectional. And I was super confused, I was puzzled, and I was looking at Mary like, could you tell me something about this watch? And she's like, well, you know, it's one of the consignment pieces that one of our patrons brought in for us to sell. But let me go grab Jason, who is the owner of Roldorf, and he used to be a Rolex watch technician at RSC. He used to make Rolexes, fix Rolexes, everything. So he's probably the best person you want to talk to here in Vancouver when it comes to like vintage, neo-vintage Rolexes. And so Jason came over after a few minutes, and he sat there, he just gazed into my eye, trying to like decipher what confusions I have in my head regarding this watch. He probably knows about this watch already. And he's like, okay, look, someone brought this watch in, right? The guy has brought in over 20 watches for us to sell on consignment. And he told them that when this watch was, you know, purchased by him, it already had looked like this. And he believes that one of the owners before the previous owner was in a hurry to sell this watch. So they tried polishing the watch themselves, and they even gone to the extent of trying to relume the watch themselves. The whole watch is original, he said. Like the dial, the hands, the case, everything was original as it came out of Rolex, but it's just been so badly botched. Like the polishing is just so badly done to the point that it almost looked like a Franken watch, which really is a great shame because like this model had the Swiss less than T25 at the bottom of the dial, which means that it is a tritium dial, and these are so cool. Like they're so rare, right? Because it was one of the very earlier models for this reference number. And Jason was like, yeah, you know, this watch, it's not really meant for someone who's a collector who really wants like the full set, never polished, unmolested as some people call it. It's for the guys who just want a Submariner on their wrist, doesn't care too much about the collectivity, whether all the parts are period correct. And I understood like there's definitely a market for a watch like this, but for my first ever interaction with the pre-ceramic date sub, this is actually only my second time getting hands-on to a pre-ceramic Submariner. The other one was a no date, but that's a story for a different time. I was like, oh, this is such a waste, but thank you for telling me the story. Like, this is such a cool watch, and quite honestly, it looked really good on my wrist. And if it wasn't for how messed up that watch is, I probably would have considered it. I mean, I just can't get over like everything being wonky and incorrect on the watch. Like for starters, the click spring on the bezel was broken. And if I wanted a friction bezel, I'd just wear this, the Timex Q with the friction bezel. It's friction based, no big deal. But I feel like if I'm spending that type of money on a Rolex Submariner, I really want the bezel to work. And I don't know how much it would cost, probably not too much, but at the same time, like there's way too many things that I need to fix. And in my opinion, this watch has met all of the pet peeves that I have when it comes to picking up a pre-owned watch. I don't want it to be redialed and I don't want it to be polished to crap. That's the best way I can explain it. But towards the end of me looking at this watch, I've told Jason all about my journey, like collecting Hydronauts, Prince Chronos, all these pre-ceramics, and my love for these pre-ceramic watches. He's like, okay, wait here, I have something to show you, but it is not for sale.
I can show you something really.
Sure, thank you. And I'm like, okay, what is it, right? So I'm gonna be talking about that in the next video. Make sure to like and subscribe if you like these video formats, if you like vintage, neo-vintage Rolexes and Tudors, and I will see you very shortly in the next video.